And good evening. Welcome to the show. It's probably one of my favorite hours of the week, with no disrespect to all our other fantastic presenters, but Ollie Mammon, you never
Not
know what
very
you're going to
fair.
get.
Not
Anyway,
very fair, Becky.
welcome to Men's Radio Station, to a show that has just gone off like a rocket ship. It has. It's called the ABC of CBD, and it features the extraordinary and unpredictable Ollie Mammon. Ollie, how you doing today?
I'm doing very, very,
I'm
very
always
good. Can
scared
we
to
get a
ask.
warm hello
Scared
to
to
the
ask.
legendary Russ Kane as well? He
Yeah,
chose his bed to lie with me, the crazy, crazy man.
sounds
But thank you
a
so
bit
much for everyone who's tuned
sounds
in
a bit rude,
today.
love. But let's continue. Anyway,
Cheeky.
Ollie, I know you've got tons to do, but first, a word from our sponsors.
I'm sure you've heard before that good quality CBD needs to be really, really expensive. This is the new view of CBD. A product created by users for users. A product at an affordable price, available everywhere, at any time, at the simple click of a button. Just CBD and MCT oil. No additives, no preservatives, and no flavor enhancers. It's a simple subscription-based service. The cleanest possible CBD delivered to your door for the lowest possible price. Your product, your rights for the lowest possible price.
And I got to say, before Ollie kicks off, straight in on our comments, all the way from Spain, the middle of Spain, on a tractor. I mean, when I mean the middle, I mean like, wow, I've seen photos. It's from Chrissy Holt, who's one of our listeners and one of Ollie's new clients. Let me just read this out. We don't ask for testimonials. We really don't. Hi there, Oliver and Russ. Kiss, kiss. My CBD is working. I'm having more relaxed sleep. Kiss,
Brilliant.
kiss. What more do you want out of life?
Exactly what I wanted to hear.
That's
Glad I can
fantastic.
help you, Chrissy. You deserve
That's
it, my
so
darling.
good. It's so great when, we anyway, I'm thrilled. Ollie, back to you, fella.
Proof in the pudding right there. Hey,
That's the
Russ.
point.
Hey,
Yes.
buddy.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. Thank you. I'm much
Good
better than I
man.
was. Feeling
I
all right.
enjoy this too, by the way, if that helps.
Oh,
I
no,
enjoy
here's
spending
a
time with
very
you on
good
a weekly
question.
basis.
Here's a very good question, apart from you and I just shooting the breeze and smacking each other on the back, from Francoise Pascal. Does CBD help with deep depression? Ollie, your call.
So,
Interesting.
what is your depression from? Okay, depression, like a depression as a real depression, as in, I have bipolar, I have depression. I wouldn't recommend you start using CBD. Okay, I wouldn't recommend you don't use it, but I wouldn't recommend you use it as your treatment for depression. However, okay,
Yeah.
there are people who do feel low and who do feel, you could say, there are days where they feel high and days where they feel low. And there are some people, in that case, it can help them on low days, anxious days, sad days. However, I mean, like, does CBD help with depression? It's very much an individual case by case basis. I have days where I feel a little dark, and yes, CBD does help me. However, do I only take CBD to help me on my dark days? No, I have other meds which I do use also. So, I mean, like, when it comes to psychological based elements, I always suggest everyone go and speak to a therapist. I speak to a therapist. It's a very, very, very powerful use of an hour. I wouldn't say it's going to harm you. Okay, I can't imagine CBD making depression worse. However, I can't imagine, I can't tell you to go and put all of your hope into a bottle of drops. I would say that, a little bit more clinical supervision should actually be recommended. I know it helps with like anxiety, which has helped Chrissy with.
Definitely.
Yeah, and
Right.
so like
Now, I'm going to jump in. And forgive me for blowing my nose, how deeply unprofessional we are. That's life. It's all mad. Francoise, I've known you many, many years, and I'm enormously fond of you. So I'm going to say this. I'd never met Ollie before we started doing the show. We talked for months beforehand, and I thought, well, maybe this is a load of old hoo-ha, and maybe it's really worked. But I was excited to put it on the roster of Men's Radio, and Ollie and I become good pals now. His stuff works. I don't have to say that. If it didn't work, believe me, I would say it didn't work. It works. he sent me. I'm gonna just get it. Hold your horses, everybody. Now I've got these rollers, and when I'm getting stressed out, which is running two radio stations kind of all the time, I just rub it on my temples, rub it on my wrists, as Ollie suggested. Seems to work. It doesn't matter to me, Francois, if it's a placebo. I don't care if there's fairy liquid in it. It doesn't mean it works. I feel more relaxed. I feel more focused. I can get straight back to my work. And that sort of low-level anxiety goes away. Now, what worries me, and this is out of Ollie's purview, if I may say so, Ollie, is as soon as I see the word suicide, that is beyond what I, as a writer and broadcaster, and Ollie, as an expert in his field, can talk about. It would not be right for us to do that. As one friend to another, Francois, you need some professional guidance on that. Anxiety attacks, our anxiety levels are through the roof.
As a nation, as a
It's
planet
awful.
right now.
As a
It's
nation,
awful.
as a planet, and even the dogs. Don't dismiss this. Even the dogs are behaving in a way that getting anxious because they feed off us. But that's one thing. And Ollie, without doubt, can help you with anxiety. There's no two ways about him. If you're feeling suicidal, that is way beyond what we can do on ABC of CBD. I'm very happy.
Sorry.
First of all, awful that you feel like that, Francois, because I've known you for years. Everybody loves and adores you, and you're a fantastic person. But everybody has very dark thoughts, and I'm sorry, this is not what we're going to do, but I cannot let a comment like that slip by.
No, of course.
And without reaching out. I'm very happy to introduce you to some of our experts on men's radio and women's radio. I would do that, obviously, affect the introduction, but please don't think that CBD could remove that. It will help you with anxiety. It will help you sleep better. It will help you relax. But if you're feeling suicidal, please reach out to somebody professional. Please do. Nathan Wogman, please seek qualified professional support. Wishing you the best of luck. Absolutely so. Was the first port of call, Francois, and I'm sorry, Ollie, to bite into.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
But this is something. If we started a radio station which is about suicide prevention and mental health, it would be completely remiss of me not to deal with this.
It's not my realm of expertise. I would be irresponsible to be giving an answer. Like everyone who's paid attention to any show I've done realizes that I love to talk, and any opportunity and any question and any query which I have the ability to answer, I will always give an answer, even whether it's right or wrong. And I'm sure there are people out there like this guy, what's he talking about? But I mean, in terms of the like Russ was saying, in terms of basically the box that this term falls into, it's not really something which I feel very comfortable dealing with. And, it's not something which I'm professionally capable of dealing with. The first thing I said on my first ever show is, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a guy who makes CBD products. And I have done so for the last 5-6 years. And I've invested my time into understanding how CBD works and how to get the best out of a CBD product for an end user. Francois, you've been watching us and supporting us since day one. We're here for you. We support you. Like Russ says, there's a lot of love for you. I just want you to, I'm sorry that this is not something which I can really give advice on. But
what we can do of an absolute practical nature, as Nathan has said, Francois, if you're feeling really down, first thing, call the Samaritans. Call the Samaritans, please. And the number, and Sinner, if you would be so kind as to put then, thank you. God, Sinner is like telepathic, isn't he? He is our producer, an extraordinary chap. Thank you, Sinner. 116123. Francois, that's all you dial. 116123. You will get through to someone really good, fully trained. Have a talk.
And Francois, don't be apologetic for talking. It's very important to talk in today's world. It's important. Now, listen, I'm going to have to apologize. We have to get on with the show. We have an incredible guest today. Okay, her name's Dr. Callie Seaman. She is one of the more educated people I know in this industry. No, she really is, and she
say that.
She comes from. She's a very special person because she comes from a She comes from an active background. She's actually gone out there and educated herself. She's an analytical chemist. She's an educated patient. She's an educated advocate. She's an expert and an entrepreneur in the hydroponic space. And generally, she has this incredible story. You know, she's one of the, you know, she's not old at all, but I mean, in our community, we're a very young community. Most people involved in the cannabis industry are between the ages of like 20 and 30. I mean, like, it really is a very young, up and coming industry. Callie's 40, so she's been around for a while. She's been involved.
She won't thank you for that.
I know, but she's been involved in the space for more years than most of us. And fact of the matter is she has this incredible depth of knowledge. And, you know, every time I meet her, I have this fantastic conversation with her, and she really does know things that, once again, I don't know. So that's why I brought her on, because, you know, like I said, as a patient and as a user and as someone who's gone out there to get herself a PhD in order to understand her life and understand her chosen career in the best possible way, has got to be respected. So, I mean, without further ado, the guest. Love how quick they went to that and it comes. I love that.
Like magic,
that was a good introduction.
It's like magic.
Are you upset with me?
No,
Who?
no.
Russ said you would be upset with me because I mentioned your age.
No, I'm quite happy about being 40, if I'm honest. I'm embracing it. I feel like you've got more wisdom. You feel like you're...
Callie, would you like to swap?
You're not 40, Russ. You're like 80.
I'm up for that. What? What's that?
Hearing's a bit off? Yeah?
Yeah,
I'm just joking. I'm bullying you for being old, Russ. I'm bullying you for being old. I'm sorry.
Anyway, that's the end of the show. It's been really great. Thanks for joining us, Callie and Ollie Sodoff. Right, here we go.
So,
anyway,
Dr. Seaman, meet Russ. Russ, meet Dr. Seaman.
Not Russ. About me. It's about you two. I'm just listening. I'm like a passenger here. You carry on.
Russ is...
Doesn't matter.
Russ is upset with me now. Okay, fine. So, Dr. Seaman, without further ado, tell us about yourself.
Well, a beautiful introduction. So where shall I start? Do I start with age 15 when I had my first epileptic fit?
Yeah, definitely. Let's start with that.
So age 15, I went to school. I was a normal teenager, very active, top of the class kind of student, tried hard. I went to school one day. It was November. It's this time of year. It's a funny time of year. And I knew I didn't feel very well. And my mum had wrote me a note for PE, so I didn't have to do PE. And I went and sat down on the school field and then woke up. And the next thing, I was going into the back of an ambulance and the whole school was surrounding me. So I'd had a grand mal, was what we called back then. That was back in the mid-90s.
Could you say that phrase again, Dr. Seaman? You had a...
Grand mal.
Grand mal.
Okay. What does that mean?
That's the old terminology for a tonic-clonic seizure. It's the classic seizure everyone knows. Everybody taught, you know, if you saw somebody shaking on the floor, they'd passed out. That's what, as I say, back in the 90s, when there wasn't as much sort of known about epilepsy, that's what it was classified. Now there are tens of different kinds of seizures that they've actually, you know, put them into compartments of their own. And what I'd had was a tonic-clonic seizure, so completely passed out, shaking, and convulsing in the normal manner. Rushed to hospital, had tests very quickly, and all they found was I had a low threshold epilepsy, but very quickly put me onto clonazepam, which is a pharmaceutical medication, which I've now found out lately is quite happily used in the clubs. It's a clubbing drug, and I basically spent 2 years of my life off my face going to school.
What do you mean by a clubbing drug? Like a speed or like a...
Well, it comes into the same sort of class. It's in a class of its own, but it gives a euphoric feeling. So sort of similar to ecstasy, though I don't remember it ever kind of making me feel this way. I don't ever remember feeling euphoric whilst taking this medication. But what I do know is it definitely dumbed me down, definitely made me subdued. And my grades dropped at school. I came out of my GCSEs at 16 with sort of C's and D's as opposed to the A's, which I was predicted. Went on to do my A levels and had struggled through the first half of those. But luckily, I had an amazing father. I had a dad who was very open-minded and introduced me to cannabis. And,
how old were you when you got introduced to cannabis?
I was 16. But it was something that was part of my life all my life. My dad had always grown. He'd always produced, for his own personal consumption and for a couple of friends, one who had got MS as well. So it was very, very underground, and there wasn't very much talked about it. And I was always taught not to talk about it. Loose lips sink ships. And I lived in a constant fear of that my dad would be took away from me, and he wasn't, luckily, but it was something I lived in that fear of. And when I went to university, I was always encouraged not to drink alcohol because that could cause seizures. So he would always make sure I had some cannabis. He always made sure that I had my own supply, that was a good, clean supply, that we know how it had been grown, how it had been treated, everything about it. I didn't have to go to people on the street. I knew everything about the produce which I was consuming, other than the cannabinoid profile, which, again, back then, that just wasn't even really spoke about. You knew about THC, but you didn't really know about much else.
When you were taking your cannabis for the first time, did you stop taking the pharmaceutical medication?
No. I carried on taking the pharmaceutical medication at the time. And, because I did as I was told. I trusted the doctors. They knew best. But my dad didn't feel right at all when I remember him saying, he was sat in there, she didn't know anything about you, Cal. She didn't really look at your lifestyle. She didn't look at anything. They were just so quick to put you on these drugs, and they were more interested about the effects of drugs as opposed to yourself. And
Sorry, and the seizures, did they continue?
No. So I had this one day of a cluster. So within that day that it happened at school, I had about 3 to 4 actual grand mals at that time, at tonic-colonic at that time, and was rushed into hospital a second time after they'd actually discharged me. And as I say, then I had all the tests very quickly, EEG, MRI, and I was put onto the medication. But I didn't really have any seizures, or what I thought was seizures. So I now look back, and there are a lot of times when I'd had other seizures. So I'd have a lot of the auras, and I still have those to this day. I'd had them when I was younger as well, when I was about 8 years old. I can still remember this feeling. But at the age of 17, when they weaned me off of the clomazepine, I swore I would never take those drugs again and went into this mass denial. I wasn't epileptic. Nope, I'm not being treated differently. I want to drive. I want to do this, because I embraced it at 15 and talked to people about it, but was treated very, very differently. I felt like a monster. People would panic. People would, if a strobe light come on, don't look at that light!
You'll die, God damn it!
Yeah, so, no, I'm going to die from you shouting at me and panicking. And that was more of the problem. The reactions I was getting. Oh.
Oh my God, hilarious. It's not
the best one
it's so messed up. It's so funny. It's so funny.
Dr. Seaman, if people haven't seen someone having a full fit, it is really, really scary. I mean, and actually, the last time I saw it was at school. It was in the middle of a debating competition, and my opposite number suddenly was on the floor. It was the whole thing with the ruler, putting the ruler against it. It was my head of, oh God. It was,
no.
So my memory,
that was the perceived wisdom at the time. But it's a very violent thing to watch, isn't it? It's very violent, and it's deeply disturbing when you're standing there going, Jesus, I know what the hell to do here. It's horrible. So I feel very much, having witnessed it, I feel very, very much what you're saying, and certainly empathize.
It's freaking terrifying. Saying I've been there once. I remember at uni, we were just chilling around, we're having dinner one night, looked over to one of my mates, sitting on the sofa, absolutely fine. 20 seconds later, he just something comes over him, like it was like The Exorcist. I think that's the only way of describing it. It was like The Exorcist. The dude's rib cage was literally protruding from his body. His neck was almost like a 90-degree angle back. His eyes were nowhere to be seen. The thickness, the viscosity of the foam coming out of his mouth, it looked like it didn't make sense. and then you basically had this entire what's it called? You had this entire moment of just absolute fear and panic as I looked into this guy's eyes, and I honestly thought he was going to die in my arms. And like didn't know. It was also like I was 18 years old at the time. It was way before, you know, this Ollie who actually understands this world a little bit more. And I would remember sitting there, and I remember one of the mates just came across the room and was like, "No, mate, snap out of it," and just slapped him around the face because he didn't know what to do. And I looked at him, "What the fuck? You know, what are you doing?" You know, and he was like he just panicked. Like everyone in the room, like we were like 7, 18-year-old kids, and we just panicked. You know, like we didn't know what to do. The police came, the ambulance came. We thought the guy was just like, we didn't know what happened. It was absolutely terrifying. Terrifying.
But he survived, your friend?
He survived. Our many survived. They found out it was also one of these tonic-clonic seizures. It ended up that he had epilepsy, and over the last few years, it's actually got worse for him. You know, and it's just, it really is sad. It's sad when you live most of your life up until that point where you're absolutely fine, and then you get basically this swing out of left field. You know, and you don't. Once again, he was also left in the dark. You know, like this whole. Even epilepsy now, people still get left in the dark. I've got a buddy of mine called Edward. Edward had half of his brain cut out because they thought it would help him, and it only made him worse. I mean, like, who does that? They sent him for operation. They literally cut out half of what's inside of his head. It's just insane. And that was doctors saying it would make him better. Now they want to put like another operation where they do something else to him. And it's just like, how can that be the answer? You know, cut out your brain. How can that be the answer?
I think you have to look at it in another way, and this is something that I learned to deal with. Is the you know, how that you say it's sad that this happened, but I look at it as a gift. Now, we don't like all the gifts we're given. You know, on your birthday, sometimes you open a gift and go, "Yeah, thanks for that," but you still appreciate it as the gift, because you're given that so that you can help others, so you can help others to deal with this. And once you start seeing it as that, you don't look at it as a curse. You don't look at it as something that's bad. You look at it as something that you've been given so that you can go on and help others and speak about it. And that's what's given me strength to do that. Instead of just going, "This isn't fair. Why have I been given this? Why do I seem to have been given the bum deal here?" And you know, it's looking at it as a superpower as well. It's somebody very poignant said to me that, you know, does your brain work at 100 miles an hour? Have you always got ideas firing? Can you not sleep? It's a superpower, you know, Cal, and you need to learn to harness it. And you have to ride those up days, because it's not always about the bad days. So I have absolutely massive highs, euphoric days where I can take on the world, where I can really just completely, I am there, I am on fire. But then other days, it's you're down in the bottom of it. The dysphoria days come with that, and you have to learn to balance those two. But it's all about helping other people. And I was lucky enough to have my father, who educated me. We didn't talk about it a lot, but if it hadn't have been for him, I don't think I'd be alive today. I don't know how many more seizures that I had over the years. The mass denial I went into was a silly thing to go into.
Let's talk about that.
Well, because I didn't want treating differently, I found an inscribing on a table that said Callie Seaman is a smackhead. And they thought I was on drugs because this had happened at school.
Kids are so cruel. Kids are so mean. I mean, like, looking back at it.
Then they discovered the internet and Twitter.
And then they became 10 times worse. Imagine being a kid now, Callie. How terrible would that be?
I mean, I've got a 16-year-old son, and I would not like to have to deal with the pressures that they deal with. But luckily, there was no evidence when we were around, so we could do it.
But that's one of the things we talk. It's one of the things, as an aside, we talk about a lot on men's radio, because it is bullying. Yeah. And when I was at school, you know, when you left the school gate, well, I didn't. I was at boarding school. When you left the school gate, the bullying stopped. You went home and watched TV and had a jam sandwich. Now the bullying is 24/7, and it's a totally different ball of wax, and it's awful. So we have a lot of experts come on and talk about it. It's horrendous. Back to you, Dr. Seaman.
I know that I've got to totally agree with you there. It's you know, they say the phrase "sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me." I remember I had a headmaster who used to tell us.
Rubbish, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
rubbish.
he did a whole assembly about how wrong this sentence was, and he used to stand up and say, "No, you should be thinking about what you're saying. You know,
Of
words
course you
can
should.
hurt far deeper
Of course you
than
should.
and we need to go back to that. And I think we need to teach people. There seems to be keyboard warriors as well. All of a sudden, because they're behind a keyboard, they feel that they can say anything and really cut deep.
So
And
deep.
If
it's
I could
wrong.
just jump in for a second, because it's something that's so important, and you're a professional, you will understand this. When I was at Capital Radio for 20 years, when we got letters, because there wasn't the internet, we get letters, and they were in green ink. We knew they were from nutbags, and you'd open the letter in the green ink, and you think, Jesus, I hope you don't walk and drive a car and do anything responsible because you're raving mad, right? And you throw the letter away. And of course, now because it appears on your laptop or your phone and it looks like it's formatted and it's not in raving mad green ink, everyone says, oh, this might be true. No, you're raving mad. So this is one of the things it's very hard to differentiate from people who are completely bonkers, flat earth society, the rest of it, let's keep it non-political, and people who are trying to make an actual valid point. That's one of the problems that technology, I'm afraid, has given us. So your point about sticks and stones is so true.
Yeah.
It can cut and it can cut deep, and especially when you're a kid, it's horrible.
Well,
You don't have the wherewithal to say, the hell with you, you're an idiot. You don't. You're a kid. You take it right into your heart. It's horrible.
Yeah, it did, and it had that impact on me, and I went into that denial. And I went into mass denial with my epilepsy up until I was 35, when I was at work. It was a very hot summer. I've been working really hard. I was in the middle of doing my PhD, and my business partner was on holiday at the time. I was loading a wagon. I was on, working silly hours as well as trying to finish the PhD off. And the the hot flush started. It started in my feet and it started to crawl up like the Death Eaters do. And it started to envelop me. And I've just gone having a hot flush. It's all right. It's a hot day. Just having a hot flush. Went to the toilet, woke up on the floor.
Oh.
Pile of blood. Crawled towards the door, opened it up, and the boys picked me up off the floor. I didn't know what happened. I'd smashed my face up, big lump on the head. This tooth had got knocked out, still hurts to this day. And it was one of those things that happened. But at the time I was still in denial. I spent another 6 months in denial, telling everybody I'd fainted. It was a hot day. I'd not eaten anything. I'd fainted. And then finally, one day, I just sat and realised that I needed to come out of denial, that I'd always been epileptic, and that it had been given to me as a gift to help others. And from that moment on, I realised that that's what I had to do. I mean, part of one of the reasons where that first fit had happened is that also, because I was completing my PhD, I'd actually reduced down. I'd actually stopped smoking cannabis. I'd just stopped because I was trying to clear my mind. I was
You wanted to get the brain power on. Standard exam prep. You stop smoking weed so you can remember everything. It's like standard stoner etiquette.
Yeah, I've got to get this done. I don't need to be staring at the TV, or I don't need to be doing some drawing or going off on a tangent. I need to get my head into these peer-reviewed journals. Yeah. So I'd give that up. So I thought that was part of the reason why I believe I had such a big fit, as well as the stress that was on top of it. So a year goes by, I alter my lifestyle. I start doing a lot more exercise, starts training for a half marathon. What do I do again? Because I'm training for a half marathon.
Stop cannabis consumption.
Yeah. 2 days after the half marathon, I have another clonic seizure at work. Luckily, Simon Spinks, my business partner, or who I refer to as my Cheshire Cat, he is the one who's been present for a lot of my episodes, and I can hear him. He speaks to me as I talk, as I'm going under, because there's lots of different kind of seizures, and he keeps talking to me. And he's almost like in Alice in Wonderland, the Cheshire Cat sat up in the tree just talking, and I can hear him, and then he disappears, and then he'll come back, and he keeps me there So that's what I call him, and I'm a big fan of Alice in Wonderland, and didn't realise that actually Lewis Carroll was epileptic, and a lot of what he was
Oh,
describing in there. Yes, a lot of what he's describing, that shrinking feeling is quite normal with people with epilepsy. That feeling where, you've become very small. There's lots of different kind of symptoms of epilepsy that people don't even realise. Seizures, you don't realise, staring into oblivion. Being clumsy, sort of, there's the flying saucer syndrome they call, where particularly in the morning, you'll have arm jerks and just throw things all over, or start babbling like you're drunk. I've even heard one where she just goes for a run and just runs and doesn't stop, and then comes back around and goes, "Where am I?
Oh my God.
Where am I?" There's lots of different seizures.
And then you have the anger as well. You have some people who just go into fits of anger, and their whole life they're told that they need anger management, but actually they need real medication. They need medication for their seizures. That's something else which I've heard. I've heard of people who have severe bouts of anger, and everyone will think they're just being a dick, but they'll come out of it and they won't know what they've said and done. But it's not anger. It's not a fit of rage. It's actually epilepsy. And then what happens is you have a lot of these misdiagnosed, these misdiagnosed actions which are not being put in the right category. And imagine that, you live in a world even today where, kids and animals they have seizures. But it's not a seizure. Just he ate something wrong. I met a dog in the park 2 days ago who was having a seizure. And I was like, look, I'm really sorry. Your dog's having a seizure. No. He does this a lot. I was like, yeah, he's got epilepsy. He's having a seizure. No. It's what he does when he wants attention. I was like, nah, mate, your dog's freaking dying. Okay. Like you can see he's foaming from the mouth. He goes, no, it's just cold. I was like, okay, listen, I don't want to tell you how to raise your dog. All right. But seriously, go home, do some research into epilepsy, and you'll see your dog's not well. And people know that fits exist, and people know seizures are something, but they don't want to see their inner circle as having that issue. You know how hard it is to admit that someone's got a problem, because admitting you've got a problem means that there's something to deal with. It's a little bit like your leaky faucet. All right. You've got that leaky tap. All right. Everyone's taps drop. Now that is an issue. It means that there's an issue with the caster, and it means eventually that could end up breaking and causing a massive flood. But what do we all do? We ignore the dripping tap. And it's the same thing. Especially with epilepsy, so many people ignore the signs of what can end up being catastrophe. And it's as my education strengthens around this subject, I start to see it a lot more. I start to see the tell sign people who might not just have personality issues. They might actually have a medicinal disorder.
Do you know what the great thing about denial is? There is no problem. That's the fantastic thing about it, because you're in denial. There is no problem. There's nothing to deal with. And it is the fantastic side of it. But until things keep happening, there's also the bad side of it, because you're not dealing with the problem.
So here's an interesting point, Dr. Seaman, from one of our listeners, Chrissy Holt, out in Spain. My son, Earl, didn't take his medication because he said it made him worse. He started severe fits at the age of 28, but I'm sure he had it from 3 years, but the doctors didn't pick it up.
Totally. I can remember being 8 years old, and I remember we spoke about this the other day, didn't we, Ollie? I was on about that. Now I've come out of the denial, and now I'm actually really sort of talking more about it. I realised I'd been having fits. I'd had fits at university when I was there. I'd gone and hid in the toilets and sat in there and passed out. I can remember, as I say, being about 8 years old, stood on a school field and having this exact feeling. Now, anyone who's epileptic knows what an aura feels like. Everybody has their own kind of little thing. A lot of us call it a glitch in the matrix, a deja vu, that a weird feeling that only if you're epileptic and you're discussing it with someone else, and that's what gives you comfort, somebody else knows that feeling. And it can be a sudden fear of high, of that you feel this rush, but then when you acknowledge that rush that starts, you can then panic because you know what's coming. You know it's possibly I'm going to have a tonic colonic, or I just got to calm, do some breath work, take a moment, talk yourself down. It's going to be all right. This is going to be over in a minute. Because when you're actually out cold, you don't feel anything. It's just like going to
you're
sleep.
fine. Yeah, you're absolutely fine.
Yeah, until you wake up and you're like, oh, my face, ow, oh,
Right, who ripped my tooth out? Who was it? All right, who did that? It was you, wasn't it? Yeah. Oh,
Or
poor girl. Poor girl.
the worst bit is the faces, people's faces and the fear. You mentioned it earlier that it's
Yeah.
horrible to see.
Mm.
If you ever witness somebody having a seizure, one of the best things you can do is smile at them when they're coming round.
Seriously?
Smile at them. Yeah.
Ooh,
Smile
wow.
at them and tell, straight them, tell them it's all okay. You're all okay. Because that fear, when you can see everybody stood around you is going, oh, they've come round, she's alive. That's
Well,
actually
yeah, but
worse.
that's a natural reaction. There was an earlier comment, again from Spain. Sin, if you could pop this up, that'd be great. My first experience of someone with epilepsy was my boss in the buying office. He had an awful fit. I thought he was dying. I was only 16 and I was terrified and didn't know what to do. I felt really guilty afterwards for being so uncaring. Next day he was fine. So I don't think it's that people are uncaring. It's that one, they're absolutely scared stiff, and two, you don't want to do the wrong thing. That was before the suing culture, which, God forbid, if you do the wrong thing, they're going to sue you for every penny you've got, which is nuts because you're only trying to help. But people genuinely don't know what to do.
Yeah. One of the things I have done, and this is what makes it so that those who have never seen this before don't sort of witness it. I obviously tell my inner circle around me that obviously I'm epileptic, and I call it George. So I give it the name George. So if I say to a friend, George is here, they know to get me out the room very quietly, very calmly, and they know how to deal with it. And they know what is the best way. And I spoke about Simon being my Cheshire cat and talking. Just keep talking to the
So
person.
what is, God forbid, I've never met you, but supposing I was there and there was nobody else and you turned to me and said, Russ, George is here. So I'd think there was some inexpensive clothing from Asda.
I had this. I didn't understand what you were talking about when you were going on about George and George. Although it's obviously her partner. Obviously, it might be her kid. Maybe it's her dog. And the way she kept on bringing it up, and I was like, "Who's George?" Like literally, I didn't want to ask because I felt like maybe I'd met him. And I was like, if I've already met him, I don't want to be that dude. It's like, yeah, George, of course, absolute legend. So it thank you so much for clarifying that. Because
dog, you idiot. Right, anyway, so because I think this is really very useful. I didn't really know we were going to go here, but this is so useful because
we weren't supposed to go here, but that's what happens.
Well, no, we'll get back on your track in a second, Ollie. But
I'm enjoying
what
this.
happens, if you say to me, right, I'm about to have a fit in code, what should Ollie and I do?
Protect my head. So
protect your head.
Yes. Have you seen Quadrophenia where Sting's going, no, leave the face? It's about protecting the head. So
how do we do that?
Sort of lay me down, move everything out of the way.
On your back?
On your side is the best way, sort of recovery position. Or quite often I will be just sat and somebody who is epileptic will know the best position to be in. Quite often I will like to sit down. Another thing I do is take my trousers off. I want to take my trousers down.
Bit keen, but okay. All right.
It's what happens. It's happened a couple of times.
I told you she was cheeky, Russ. I did tell you she was cheeky.
Well,
all right.
It's all about me.
I would have thought that wasn't that. There's a time and a place for everything, Dr. Seaman. That's probably not it. But anyway, right. So what, I hate to ask, but I've got to go there. You won't get this on the BBC. Why do you take your trousers off?
It's me trying to cool down because it's a hot flush. One of the things that I want to do, and it's one of the bizarre things, is cool down. And I know it's happened a couple of times where people have gone, "Why have you got your trousers around your ankles?" And it's because I've been having a fit, and it's me. I'd go to the toilet quite often to take my trousers down to let more air around to get me cooler. Okay. And it's, as I say, there's a couple of episodes when I've been out where I did exactly the same, and my friends had to try and get me into the car. They didn't know what was going off. Yeah.
So we've got Ollie and I.
If you see Callie with her trousers around her legs, she's just had a seizure. Give her a cuddle.
Yeah.
You're on. We've got you in a sort of recovery position on the floor, let's say, or you're in an armchair. What do we do then? And how do we protect your face? So, it's a serious question. What do we do?
Cushions, pillars, move everything out the way, and it's you can hold the head with a cushion around it. Quite often using a jumper can do that. Don't restrain. Don't put anything in the mouth. time the seizure. It's a good idea. If it's longer than 5 minutes, if it doesn't stop after 5 minutes, phone an ambulance. But you don't need to phone an ambulance. It's, to start off with for the first sort of 5 minutes.
Why? I've got to ask you this, because I don't want to be remiss, and our listeners and viewers don't want to be remiss. Why would we not think, oh my God, I don't know what the hell's going on, I better get an ambulance? Why would we not at that point phone 999?
As I say, it's about timing the seizure. So if it lasts longer than 5 minutes, there's going to be problems. But if it's
what
less,
have I said that's amusing you?
It's just oh my God. Do you know what I mean? It's just like the way you said it. It's
Well,
amusing.
it's true. I mean, if we're having a conversation now and suddenly Dr. Seaman throws a fit and has a full-blown fit, well, it would be A, dramatic, B, horrible. We'd sit here like two idiots going, oh my God.
But for the first 5 minutes, we don't call an ambulance. At least we know that.
Okay.
No, but
it
also,
all depends what you're comfortable with as well. If you feel you want to get the ambulance, you phone the ambulance. But if you're within the circle,
so I mean, I need your advice. We need your advice. If it's somebody you know and they have a pattern, but if you were having, this person you never met before and this happens, man, I'd be on the ambulance phone like instantly, because I would be terrified that if I hadn't acted, it would be to their detriment. Does that make sense?
Completely.
I'd feel like Chrissy Holt did. I'd feel personally responsible.
Yeah.
And if somebody said, "Why didn't you phone the ambulance?" Didn't occur to me. You'd look like you're a completely disinterested human being. That's what worries me.
Yeah, I can definitely see it from that point of view. But as someone who is epileptic, it's something that happens regularly. When within your inner circle, you say there is, this is something that happens. You wake back up, and then you just need to rest, because what happens is they'll rush you to hospital, usually put you through full of diazepine. It's needed, and that is sometimes needed, and anyone with epilepsy will know that. But quite often we come back round within minutes and we're fine, everything's okay, we just need to have a good sleep.
And I have one more question, which is because you went, oh no, when I was at school, and the kid in the debating society, the teacher, head of English, who's a wonderful man, put the ruler to stop him swallowing his tongue. Is that you're pulling a face? That was the last thing I ever heard.
Yeah, you can't swallow your tongue.
Fair enough. So nothing. Don't do anything to protect the mouth.
No, don't do anything. It's more about protecting the head here and just moving things out the way. That is the best thing, is move everything out the way so that they'll not bang into anything, but protect the head. Keep the head from being banging against anything.
I swear to God, this is my last question. You said don't restrain.
Yep.
But if someone is thrashing around and you think they might hurt themselves, what should you? I mean, I feel I know nothing about this subject, and I'm sure our listeners all over the world and viewers probably have very little experience. What should you do if they're thrashing about? Let them thrash, or what?
Yes, move everything out the way. The more you restrict them, the more you will injure them. You've got to just let them thrash it out. It's the key is to move things out the way. Don't try and restrain them or hold them. Certainly don't slap them, and don't film them.
I never slapped anyone.
Film them? Who the hell's going to film them?
We're in a generation of...
Well, here's my mate having an epileptic fit. Ha ha. LOL. I mean, what is that?
Then also, it could be filming them for educational purposes. Do you know that you have one of these seizures? Do you know how one of it fits? But if you were to wake up from a seizure and you see your mate filming you, all that's going to happen is it's like, imagine you're in a pissed off mood and your mate's filming you. It's not going to make you happier. Imagine you wake up and your mate is filming you. You'll be like, look, mate, what the hell are you doing? Do you know what I mean? It's just that it's quite invasive. It's quite invasive.
Right. Let's get back to you and Ollie. I'm sorry, but it's such important stuff.
No, I'll be honest with you. I'm actually very happy that we haven't covered any of the points. A, it means I get to bring Caddy back on for another show, and B, it means that we've got something out which I didn't actually even think about. And to be honest with you, the whole, what would an individual do in a situation of epilepsy? It doesn't have anything to do with our show title, but it does have something to do with the world we live in, especially, people have epilepsy, and it'll be good to know what's going on. And with more and more people using cannabis for epilepsy, it's, you know, it's being discussed a lot more. And, you know, I would actually like to kind of get back onto the cannabis side, but I mean,
but I just
everything we've done is
Seaman.
very important. I'm not at all annoyed that we've kind of tangented on the direction we've tangented.
I just want to say to Dr. Seaman, thank you. And you know what? Out of all the people watching all over the world, if we've helped one person, it's been
that's all that
completely,
matters.
it's been completely, you know, and maybe saved a life. It's completely worth it. And Ollie says we would love to have you back because you are gold, as they say. Right, Ollie, back to you.
Fine. So we've discussed, you know, Callie's upbringing, and we discussed, you know, like her realization of her epilepsy. We discussed her father giving her medication. Let's talk about now. So right now in the cannabis space, what do you actually do?
Lots of things. So I'm part of MedCan Support. Now, due to my epilepsy, I got involved with Matt Hughes and Hannah Deaking and Jade Proudman, and we came together and we felt there was an education and support group for parents with children with epilepsy. So we're giving support. We're not giving advice. It's support. It's about bringing parents together who are in the same boat, who want to know a lot more about it, who don't understand what the difference between a full plant extract is and what isolate is, and what kind of questions they should be asking their doctors and their experiences. So I'm working quite a lot on that at the moment as well, working so that we can help to bring good education. Then there's the business I've got. So we've got Aqua Laboratories, who we are a liquid fertilizer manufacturer for the hydroponic industry. As you mentioned at the beginning, I've been in the hydroponic industry for nearly 20 years now. Started off, I originally, part of my degree I did in biomedical sciences, I went to work for GlaxoSmithKline for a year as a placement. I hated it. I hated it with a passion.
Why?
Can't imagine anyone liking it.
Most people do, but why did you hate it?
It wasn't for me. It was very, very I found that drugs were not being developed based on how good they were. They were more about what the profit was as well. So I was in a lot of meetings.
Big pharma.
Yeah. Didn't enjoy it. They wanted me to go down to the animal testing areas. I was not up for that. The culture was not that. I was just a number. And I went to work for the local hydroponic shop that my dad took me in when I was 15. I started work there as a Saturday girl, basically.
And for people who don't know, could you just in one sentence explain what hydroponics means?
Soilless growing. So growing plants without soil. So it's the use of nutrients. So you can grow plants in rock wool. You could grow them in just water. You can grow them in sand. You can grow them on carpet. You can grow them in anything. But what you have to do is you have to supply all of their nutrient needs. And what we do is make nutrients that do that. And the hydroponic industry has been around for many, many years. It's been around since the 90s in the UK. And as an industry that's not really spoke about.
Someone was talking about this recently. Actually, if you think about, and I want to be correct on this because, you know, growing's not my expertise, you know, like making CBD products is. Theoretically, a rice paddy field is hydroponics, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's it. So hydroponics have been around for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And it's the idea of growing without a soil-based medium. And it enables you to kind of control more of the aspects of the growth cycle of the plant and almost create a steady feeding process, which enables you to kind of grow like a scientific process. Because if you can control every single factor, it enables you to control the end product.
Exactly.
Considering I'm not a botanist, I mean, that's pretty dope.
It's a bit like a weight trainer. So if you think about it, it's like weight training your plants. You're giving it the optimal amount of nutrition it needs, giving it the optimal amount of light, optimal environmental conditions, depending on what you want that plant to achieve. So 80% of the produce you get from supermarkets is hydroponically grown. A lot of people don't know that. They automatically assume that it's dope growing hydroponics. No, all them tomatoes you get, all them strawberries you get, hydroponically grown, love. That's what majority of the supermarkets are full of.
The whole
But
micro garden and microgreen scene, which is taking over the world at the moment, that's all hydroponic. You've got this new concept, which is you have a lot of restaurants now which grow their own microgreens. Microgreens are so you'll have like like a herb which has all the nutrients of a broccoli, but it doesn't look like broccoli. Okay, and it'll be like a microgreen broccoli or a microgreen. There are thousands of different plants out there, but there's a big culture at the moment about producing cultivating and producing greenery plants using hydroponic growing systems.
Well, it's good for mass production. It's an efficient use of water, an efficient use of nutrients, because you can time it perfectly to what that plant's needs are. You can recycle it all. So it's all about giving the plant exactly what it needs when it needs it. Now, it's perfect for scientists because you can find out by removing one of the elements, say, for example, calcium, you can see what that does to the plant. But you can also then tinker with these little things to encourage the secondary metabolites within plants. So things like THC, CBD, terpenes, these are all produced not so that the plant can actually grow and survive. These are produced as a defense mechanism. And these are produced to actually defend it from things like fungus, bacteria, or to attract insects for pollination. That's your terpenes, the smells for doing that. Others, as I say, are as antimicrobial properties. You've got flavonoids. They are the sunscreens within the actual leaves. So when plants go a darker color, like an acer, for example, that's red, the erythrocyanin that's in there is produced as a sunscreen so that it doesn't actually photosynthesize too quickly. So all of these compounds are produced for a reason, and they're all produced to help the plant to go on to reproduce again. And part of my research, I'm getting to the bit of it now, what I do is look at optimizing that. So bringing the best out of that. And I'm working with a number of licensed cultivation facilities, some in Denmark, one in New Zealand. We're looking at working with someone in Macedonia. We're working with a couple in the UK as well. And we're working on different projects to actually encourage particular secondary metabolites within that plant and looking at the genetic potential of that plant. So each plant, as we know about cannabis, has a particular genetic profile, and it'll have a particular ratio of cannabinoids within it. Some will produce high amounts of THC, others will produce THCV, others will produce high limonene, others will produce high camphorine. Now, each of those are all different, and these combinations all work together for the entourage effect, which I'm sure you've spoke about, Ollie, quite a bit. We've spoke about it together. So each plant has that genetic potential like an individual person. You have the genetic potential to go on to do this. So what we're trying to do is optimize that genetic potential of the plant and get the best out of it, those plants, using fertilizers, using lighting regimes, using temperature differences, shock techniques as well.
Shock technique.
So things like shouting at it.
You walk up to a plant and you go, poof, and he goes, oh, I'm going to grow.
Trick or treat.
As daft as that sounds, so if you shake a plant, it will release it will produce release chemicals from it, which will create the stem to get sturdier and fatter. So by shaking it every day, you increase the stem diameter. By increasing the stem diameter, more water can get to the top of the plant, so you'll get a bigger yield. So as daft as that sounds, it works.
You see, you know what it is? I'll tell you something that fascinates me, because the mass media would poo-poo all of this and say, well done, Dr. Seaman's raving mad. I'm sitting here thinking this is genius. And also, and I'm not making a political point at all, when everyone mocked Prince Charles for treating plants in much the way that you are describing now, you know, he was ridiculed and he just had to take it.
There's a lot to be said about, you know, other science and other theories. We are programmed to believe the science we're told. We're programmed to believe what we're told instead of questioning it.
Look where we are now.
We don't question enough. And more shows like this need bringing up, where people are questioning more and bringing theories to practice. I mean, people say, they say you're crazy for saying talking to your plants, but you're giving out CO2. By talking to that plant, you're giving that plant CO2. It's using that.
You are the only person I have ever heard or would have read who's ever made that point, ever. And when you say it like that, it is both logical, it's scientific, it makes perfect sense.
But then
so
you can
easy to ridicule. That's
you
the
can
problem.
go on. You can go on to the other point as well, Russ. There's things like, there are ice studies which are done. Okay, and there's studies done on ice. Okay, and they take ice and they'll take 5 people who will scream at the water and say it's a piece of crap whilst they're freezing the ice, and then they'll take water, the same water from the same vessel. Okay, and they'll say nice things to the water when it's freezing in the same, in the same scientific environment. Turn your phone off, Russ. Ignore
it's my landline. Can't turn that off.
And basically, what they've realized is when they freeze that ice, there are impurities in the one which is spoken badly to, and the one which is spoken nicely about has a different format, and the crystal format is different. And it's all about energies. There's scientific proof out there. You can type into Google, the ice energy or whatever it's called, or like talking to ice and freezing it. Sorry.
Water activity. This is one to look at, and this is the new big thing within the actual cannabis industry. Water activity is the energy within water to support life. Now, when you're drying out a flower set, so when you've grown the plant and obviously you've harvested and then you're drying it out, a lot of people question when the optimum time for that to be able to be then decarboxylated and then consumed, or decarboxylated during consumption. Now, one of the things that you can measure is what's known as water activity as opposed to moisture content, because completely drying something out isn't the best for it. But this activity is at the point of where it will stop supporting life. And when you reduce that down, and they've learned to measure that now, and you've got that down to actually 0, there is no microbes will grow on it. So any E. coli won't grow on it, any of your botrytis won't grow on it, and it's optimal for actually use.
Now, we've got about 4 minutes left under that. How has CBD helped you? Does it continue every day to help you or regularly help you?
Totally. Because
Right.
one of the problems I had was, I discovered that consuming cannabis helps me, but you can't go to work stoned. You
No.
really can't. You can't function
Doesn't help.
properly. And now you've got CBD that's actually available on a morning. So I can use a tincture on a morning to get through the day. And then on an evening, obviously, I like to have my high THC because I like to be able to sleep. And I like the way that it helps with creativity. So it's the CBD has allowed me to be able to still function and not be absolutely off my face all day.
Yeah.
I get that.
This is it. I think that is the most salient point from this, and endorses what Ollie's been saying. Because if I went to a doctor and they were smacked off their face, I wouldn't be I would not be very impressed. I'd be out the door and then reporting them to the British Medical Association.
It's about functionality, isn't it? Like one of the biggest fights which a lot of us in the cannabis industry are fighting is this, pharmaceuticals destroy lives. Now, fact of the matter is when cannabis is consumed correctly, it saves lives. When cannabis is consumed incorrectly, it can also cause detriment. And it's important to almost find that right balance. It's important to find, like no one says THC is bad and no one says THC is good. THC is right for the right people who need it, and THC is wrong for the wrong people who need it. And it's about understanding and creating this continuation. Like one thing we didn't really discuss, which is quite sad, is that Callie actually does like she said about this MedCan thing she's working with, about helping educate epilepsy students, but she does a lot of education in the cannabis space outside of that as well, don't you? And it's mainly the one thing we kind of got to is this idea of understanding, and it's so important. I'm going to preemptively do something. Do you want to come on again next week and continue this chat?
I can, darling. Yes,
shall we do that?
I'll do it on one condition. You have to answer this question. It's been driving me mad for the last hour. Behind you, hanging up, is that A, your dressing gown and bathrobe, or B, your doctor's white coat?
Doctor's white coat, darling. You're in
Thank
line.
you. Okay, I'm just that's all right. Okay, then you are very welcome to come back next week. We would love you to come back
I
next
just
week.
literally like
Dr.
I haven't
Seaman.
discussed one of the. You know me, I'm a furious note taker, and the only
No,
thing
well,
we
then
actually discussed.
next week I'm going to shut up and you two are going to talk. But it was so important what you said.
Yeah.
Please don't think that I know we got off to a
Is that all right, Cal?
diversion.
Yes,
really-
no.
That
was
I really
brilliant.
want to talk about this hidden knowledge, you know, because I feel like that's so important, and it's like so much of the community. I feel like they need to hear this. Russ, you've got 10 seconds. Say goodbye.
I've got 10 seconds. I want to say thanks to Ollie, extraordinary as ever, Dr. Callie Seaman, exemplary guest. Thank you so much. You are now part, whether you like it or not, of the Men's Radio Station family. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay well. Bye.